Welcome, Petra. Sadika Huanduaz is an advocate and also, I believe, an advocate for Welela. And I'm hoping that you're going to stand up at some point and just tell us about Welela, but certainly this is the lady to talk to if you have any questions about Welela. Simone Franks is a director and an advocate at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr and a mother. And I say that with greatest respect for those two roles, and I think you're going to be talking a little bit about that today. And Yolanda Jacobs, thank you. Yolanda is a commercial mediator with YSI and also a Welela member, and I would say vision holder for the Centre for Integrative Law and what we're doing here. You've backed us all the way and have been part of the team. Thank you. I'm Wendy Ward. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a resilience and leadership coach. I'm a colleague of Amanda's, and I've been working with her for a number of years, and studied law myself, but saw the light very early. Probably because I knew that I would end up in a little bit of a mess and not be able to manage the career due to the pressures, which in those days when I practiced was the only law I knew was huge London firms, and you know the stories around civic backwaters and holding onto rails was just not appealing, although actually it was to my spirit, but I didn't have the guts to say that's really where I probably would be happy. So why, I want to just say that you have wonderful flyers. I see some of you looking at them. We're not going to go into discussing or introducing people formally because you've got those, so I encourage you to just keep track. They're laid out in terms of the panel, so they're very easy to follow. This is not an easy subject, which is why it's probably not talked about, which is of course why we are talking about it today. And while the title is From Surviving to Thriving, what we're actually going to be talking about is the high levels of stress, anxiety, burnout, and depression in the legal profession. And I think we know, and the facts and the research show, that there is alarming levels of psychological distress in the legal profession. That the levels of anxiety are disproportionately high in the legal profession, particularly with full-time lawyers, than in other professions. And I think we want to ask why that is. So not all my guests on the panel today have suffered from chronic anxiety or burnout or depression, but all of them have experienced remarkable challenges in their lives. And quite personally, as a writer, I would write a book about each one of these ladies, just from the little that I've shared with them. But they've faced the music, they've got up, they've exhibited and are role models of what I call true resilience, which is not a hardy pushing on, but is a coming back with grace. So the question that I want to just start with is a very, very brief question. I'm going to run this way, but just literally 1-2 sentences max, on just to bring your voices into the room. What was it that excited you about putting your hand up to come onto this panel, and why is it an important subject? So, not an essay, 1 or 2 sentences. Petra, would you like to start?
Sorry. The exciting thing really is that it's an opportunity to do something which many of us forget about, is that we are whole persons, that we can actually practice law fully, and you can still do something for your firm, which is sort of esoteric, non-fee earning, reaching out type story, which is important for a firm, but it's not fee generating. But I think in the context of being a lawyer, it's quite important to do these things. It's not going to get me any work, nor is it going to get the firm any work, but it gives the message. I think that's why.
Thank you, Petra.
Hi, I'm Sadika. I've already been introduced to everyone. I put my hand up for this because the stress and the anxiety that goes with being a lawyer is sometimes an accepted collateral effect of being a lawyer. And all of us suffer from that, and so many of us have had to face challenges. Amanda opened up about her alcohol and drug abuse during the student years, and I don't think she's the only one. Everybody has a secret, everybody's dealing with anxiety, everybody is dealing with depression. We take our beings to our jobs. Those of us who are litigators are excellent in court. The truth is, our family lives do suffer as a result of our brilliance in court, or in the boardroom, or wherever we are. And do those people really deserve not getting all of us? I think that all of us should be able to reach a point where we can be everything we are for our clients and our organizations, and still be all of us for our families. And I think that that is what we all really want, and I do believe that that can be achieved, and that is my message. That is why I'm here today.
Thank you.
Well, just from my side of things, I think we all brought up with a feminist narrative that you can achieve whatever you put your mind to, and no matter what the obstacles are, you are going to succeed and pursue your goals. I think that once you reach the workplace, you do find that that's skewed for many, many reasons. Many of them you don't speak about because you really just want to get on with what you do, and you really don't want to let the side down. You also find that, specifically in my instance, that coming back from maternity leave is not a very easy transition, and nobody really talks about that. And I'm here just to highlight how I was able to do so with the help of so many other people and a maternity coach who enabled me to successfully make that transition. And so I don't think I've actually really spoken to anyone or even some of my colleagues about it, but it is an opportunity for me to raise my voice and to enunciate it here.
I didn't put my hand up. Amanda asked me, and I was like, okay, I don't think I'm comfortable doing this. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there's a need for it. I remembered going through depression and going through health challenges and how alone I felt, although I had all these lawyers around me constantly, and all these female lawyers around me, and how bad they made me feel about it. And I remember not having anybody to talk to about these things until, way after I dealt with it. And individually, people will open up and say to you, I'm on antidepressants, or I'm suffering from burnout, or I had to leave the profession for these reasons. But there's the stigma attached to it that when, and especially I think as a female lawyer, when you do suffer from depression or when you do have health issues, that you can't do your job. And I would like to speak openly about it. I've made a change, and there are, like so many speakers have said before me, there are options. I, for a very long time, stayed in the profession because I didn't realize there are any other options. But I'm healthy, I'm happy, and I'm still practicing law. And that's the message that I would like to send across.
Thank you. So I think it's important to make a distinction, and I'm sure you will agree with me, that between feeling anxious and an anxiety disorder, between feeling absolutely exhausted, which is a worldwide common problem with so many of us who just get out of bed every morning, and full-blown burnout, feeling depressed, and clinical depression. So I'm addressing all of you in the room, and I'd like you to put your hand up if you know anyone who has suffered from depression or burnout clinically. In other words, had help, been on meds. Who knows somebody? Keep your hands up, please, and just drop your hands if that person, that's irrespective of what profession they're in, irrespective of what sex they are, gender they are. So now drop your hands if that person is a lawyer. Drop your hands if that person is a woman. And drop your hands if that person is you. Thank you. Yes. So thank you. And what came out certainly last Friday in Johannesburg was from our poll, which I don't know whether Amanda's running again this time. Fantastic. I encourage all of you to take the poll that Amanda is running in the background. Is that surprising numbers of us have suffered from depression or are held up with meds or go through stages where things are tough. Another question, and I'm going to just take short one-word answers from you. what does the word burnout evoke in you? What does the word burnout evoke in you? So just some hands up and just quick one-word, two-word answers. Yeah. Enough. Stop. Fear. Exhaustion. Failure. Helplessness and hopelessness. Empty. Tired. Limit. Yeah. Overwhelmed. Good. Yes. Courage. Yes. Finished. Failure. Yes. Absolutely. And yes, right at the back there. Loneliness. Yeah. Numb. Yes, right at the very back. Yes. Wrong. So one of the Willela members in Johannesburg, when we introduced this subject a couple of weeks ago, said this, and I want to repeat it to you because it struck me so much. And she said this, and I might refer to it because I want to incorporate exactly what she said. She said, I try and do all of the right things. And I'm burnt out all day, every day. I've lost my joie de vivre. I am tired of being tired. And then she stopped talking about I, which was interesting, and started talking about we. And she said, but we get used to it. That's the problem. We normalize these conditions. We see anxiety, depression, and burnout as a weakness, and so we suffer in silence. We hit the wall, we bounce back 100 times, and we are pushed to our limit, and we think we can't go on, but we push on regardless. Sadhika, I'd like to start with you because I know that for a long while you experienced symptoms that you didn't even know were symptoms or conditions of this. Did you normalize this? How was it for you?
I did, because in the organization that I was working for at the time, I wasn't the only one. There were whispers of others feeling the way I was feeling. And then I started thinking that this is supposed to be the way that I'm supposed to feel. And everything was about the stats. Kept pushing onto the stats until I got to a point where I didn't feel anymore. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I couldn't feel joy. I would hear horrible things on the radio, and I would go like, oh, just another one of those. And then I thought to myself, but that's horrible. Why am I not feeling? Why am I not human anymore? I didn't know that I was suffering from depression until I eventually, just before I got married, I realized that this is not right. I wasn't like this growing up. I don't recognize myself. That's when I started seeking help. I went to a trauma center because I knew I cannot go into a marriage with baggage like this. It's only then that I did some therapy, and then I was diagnosed with depression. I didn't know that what I was suffering from was depression. And for years after being diagnosed, it didn't get any better. In fact, it got progressively worse until I hit rock bottom. I didn't tell you this or say it in the Willela group, but I feel that I'm in a safe space here, that I found myself slashing my wrist. I got there, to that point. And it's only when my son walked in and I realized, I cannot be doing this to the people who love me. It's when I realized that I need to take stock and I need to take better care of myself. And that's when I started the healing process. I started reading everything I could. I wasn't employed at the time. I didn't know that I could employ myself. I started reading, thank God for public library. There wasn't money to buy books. And the lady over there, thank you, Smart Cape. I got online on Smart Cape and I started reading everything, and I started doing a lot of healing. And all that time spent online is what connected me with the Center for Integrative Law, which brought me to this conference of last year, which connected me to Walela. So there's some advertising for you in there. Just bring it in there. But my journey started, my healing journey started when I hit the absolute bottom, where I thought there is no reason for me to live.
Thank you for sharing that. Simone, you were fired up. You were ambitious, and you put yourself into that working environment, and you were a thriving person. You knew what you wanted. What were some of the pressures that are typical of a law environment that aggravate or create a susceptibility to anxiety, burnout, and depression?
Well, I think it is just a very competitive environment, naturally. You compete for work, you compete to be the best, you compete to getting the work, to retain the work. You have to ensure that your budgets are met. You have to ensure that you maintain a family as well. You have to listen to the demands of your clients, and they can be quite emotionally draining because you are so tuned to it. You need to ensure that their outcomes are met. I suppose you take a lot of things personally, and we empathize with our clients quite a bit, and I think as females we do that, which can be good. Obviously it is good, but you're ready to take things to heart. You really don't switch off, and you thrive on that almost in a way, until you actually do take a break. In my instance, when I was on maternity leave, and you just actually have to step away from yourself and realize that this is not good. This is not how you want to practice. This is an imperfect balance that you're trying to achieve.
You talked about the bridge between bringing up a baby and bringing in the budget, and the tension that caused. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what it did in you in terms of that tension?
Yeah, I've always been reasonably competitive myself. I have always achieved and exceeded my budgetary requirements. I've always prided myself on that. I've prided myself on my relationships with my clients, and I always envisaged that when I go on maternity leave that I would be presiding over my practice from home, that I would, and everybody said by the time you go back you'd really be wanting to go back and exchange diapers for deeds. And I thought that was right, I would definitely, that was just what I was going to be doing, my mantra. And it wasn't the case, because it was the first time that I had a break from work. I started working when I was about 17 at Woolworths, and when I was working, I was studying, and then at university, and even during my articles. I never actually ever took a break or a gap year. And for me, being on maternity leave was the first time that I was with myself, alone, with my baby, and I realized that I love my family so much. And it was then difficult for me to go back into a very competitive environment where it's all about fees and it's about marketing and ensuring that your clients are happy. And I had to really get my mind around that.
And you had that transition of moving back into the world of motherhood, and the choices that you could make, new choices arose. But also, you alluded to the fact that the perfectionism and the drive that you had as a lawyer that got you so far was not necessarily appropriate as a mother. So Petra strikes me as a pragmatist at heart. And how would you talk to the differentiation between being that driven lawyer and being the other personality types that you need to embrace in different areas of your life?
Can go back to the previous century, before democracy and before internet, when I realized which you all probably realize, those of you who know me, that I'm not the typical lawyer. I recognized what Amanda said, that law is a creative space. It's a creative, it's a humanity. It's something that you can work with, but the environment doesn't lend itself to that. So all those early years of my career, I did what you did, and we litigated and carried on, but I knew I'm going to get married, I'm going to get out of this. And so it was. So I still went back after the first child and dabbled a bit at half day, and then I fell pregnant with the twins, and woohoo! Feeling a bit ill, stopped work, resigned from the office, happy days. And then in the middle of the night, my husband had that massive stroke, and I ended up with 3 toddlers plus a very disabled husband, and looking at myself saying, what on earth now? How do we deal with this? Where does one go with this? And there again, the people that stood behind me, my mother and my mother-in-law, one day at a time. We've all heard that. We all ignore it. I'm repeating it again. One day at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's how you then work back at it. But then something Barto said earlier about us being alpha males. Then I realized I have to be true to myself. I'm an artist. I'm a creative person. I cannot practice as an alpha. I'm not. Some people might think I'm an alpha, but I'm a best foil for an alpha. Alphas can step all over me. It's a great relationship because I'm a natural follower. I'm a great outspoken follower, but I'm a follower. I'm not a leader in that sense. And once I adjusted my expectations of myself, then suddenly everything was much happier. I no longer need to get 100% and be 100% effective and 100% best looking and most efficient and spotlessly clean, and my house is not perfect and my kids are being raised by other people. But it all worked out fine. I earned a living, I'm happy in my partnership. I opted out, somebody opted out as well earlier. I no longer want to be an equity director. There's no point. It is not what it drives me. So to me, looking back at my life like that, I say all the adversity, the personal feelings, the spiritual about law, and then the personal circumstances, actually at the end of the day, a perfect job for us. Absolutely stunning job, because it's creative, you can be innovative, you can be flexible as much as you like, and as energetic as you like. And the last thing I can just add, somebody else, I can't remember, something about failing. Now we fail every day. Every day there's a failure. It's either a big one or a small one. But you have to fail forwards. Again, talking as an older person to a whole lot of youngsters. You don't have to listen, but I'm telling you, in 30 years' time, you remember it. Every time you fail, you learn something. There's no amount of me telling you that you're going to learn something. And that builds you up. That gives you that strength, that resilience, that robustness to get through this life. It's got nothing to do, in a sense, with our job. It's how you opt in or opt out into this business. And there's choices.
It's interesting, I mean, linking with the first discussion as well on innovation, and innovation needs that space for failure. We know that, but lawyers are trained not to fail, and we pay them for that. So, I mean, again, can we speak to this, how can we build the courage to be able to, as Petra, as you said, to write things off, to be written off, to make mistakes, when it is such an inherent fear in lawyers?
Can I quickly say something on that? I didn't do it. You can just fix it. You're only a lawyer. You didn't cause the problem.
Well, I loved it.
It's wonderful.
We were talking about this, and Petra just said, well, what is
It's
your
the client that makes up. I'm just a lawyer. It's the client that makes up.
Exactly. And that just, okay, so you can't help, but then what's insurance?
We get paid to be perfect.
You get paid to be perfect, exactly. What's the problem with that? Because I'm thinking that's pretty good.
The problem is we start internalizing that
Yes.
So when we do fail, we don't want anybody to know.
Right.
We sweep it under the carpet. So all that depression and all that anxiety, and that's where everything festers. Because we get paid to be perfect. And we have precedents of 100 years old that doesn't apply anymore, but we've got precedent, so precedent presides over what to do next. And it might not work in today's evolving, ever-changing society. But still, the models are there, and that's what we have to work with. And it's clearly not working. That's why there are platforms like these, so that we can bring the change, to be able to have the legal system model according to the people that we are now. We are not the people we were when the precedents were set. And that is what forums like these contribute. That's what I think. The pay to get perfect is we internalize it. So when we do make mistakes, we don't want anybody to know. And when we do suffer from anxiety, depression, burnout, we hide it. And we hide it. We'll see it in others, but we'll just tell ourselves to get over ourselves, and then the problem will snowball. It doesn't start in the practice. It starts at university level because of the highly competitive nature of the things, what we study, moot courts, what they tell us to prepare for. They prepare us to make a living as lawyers. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. There was a debate earlier about that. But they don't ever teach us how to live as lawyers. And that's why we have the problem that we have now. And it's time that we make the change, because we are the women lawyers. We represent Mother Earth, don't we?
Oh, yes.
So, that's what we are here to do. I believe in Amanda's vision.
Sarika, while I certainly agree with you that the practice and even varsities perpetuate, this notion that we have to be perfect, I think it starts way before that. It starts, all of us, and the majority of people that are attracted to this profession, they are a certain personality type. Mabuti, you said earlier, yes. An A-type personality. We want to be perfect in everything that we do. We don't want anybody to see a chink in our armor, because how am I going to survive if people know that I'm not perfect? And we deal with all of this. And then we choose the profession, we don't study, we go to varsity, it's perpetuated there. You need to, get the 100%, you need to be on the dean's list, you need to get into the mock trials, and then of course we get into practice, and there's all the targets that you mentioned earlier, there's the billable hours, and suddenly we find ourselves valuing ourselves, our true selves, in this way. So suddenly you only see yourself as other people see you by the fees that you write, the amount of money that you bring in, the clients that you bring in, and you eventually start feeling worthless because of the system that you use to value yourself and the system that others use to value you. So the point that I'm making is that it starts way before that. It starts with ourselves and us, and especially as women, we need to value ourselves and we need to know our true value. So in order, when we get to practice, when we get to the corporates that say to you, this is the value system that we're going to use. If you don't write 1.8 million in 6 months, sorry, there's no promotion for you. You have to know at that stage that that is not your value system. That does not mean that that is what you are worth.
Absolutely.
And your clients also put a lot of emphasis on that. They expect you to be a super slick, super competent problem solver, and you cannot make mistakes. If you've made a mistake, don't come to me with a mistake, come to me with the solution. So, we don't really want to talk about it. If I make a mistake in my office, I'm quite vocal about it. I'll say, this is what happened, but, and I'll try and fix it as soon as possible, before somebody actually finds out, So we try and kind of compensate for that.
But that's just being responsible. That's what we're supposed to do. We make mistakes, you fix them, you own up, you put up your hand, you solve it, you claim from insurance, whatever it takes.
And the other side, Simone, the other side of, like I said, being paid to be perfect is that who sees us all the time who sees us. It's the people who are in the worst moments of their lives. Any of your divorce lawyers here, people come and see their lawyers when they need to get divorced. They come and see criminal litigator like me when their husband's in trouble and did some big fraud things. Those are traumatized, broken people that come and see lawyers. And we have to be perfect for them as well. But we are forgetting that we are actually taking on and internalizing their trauma. We take it on and it takes away layer by layer of us, and we don't realize that because I'm supposed to be your hero. I'm supposed to be your hero, you're my client. So I can't go and be weak. I have to be strong for you. But a friend of mine told me that mathematics is never going to work, because by the time you've taken up so much of other people's trauma, you are a quarter person and you're trying to heal a half a person, and that's never going to work.
I think and the other thing about that, Radhika, is we're in this profession where we deal firsthand with people's trauma, but we don't have an outlet. We don't have somebody that we can go back to and say, okay, let's just debrief. This is how this is making me feel. This is what I'm experiencing at this stage. While other professions have that, but we don't. And we see internationally that even law firms are starting to bring in psychologists specifically for this reason, to deal with that trauma of other people that we take, of clients that we're taking on all the time. And I think that is part of the problem, Wendy, that we're not just dealing with everything. And I mean, it's already so much. We're dealing with all the pressures of having to achieve, of wanting to be perfect, of splitting ourselves between professional lives and personal lives, and giving the best and being the best for our families and for our clients. But then we still have this added responsibility of dealing with clients' trauma as well.
You can imagine being a doctor, you can't cure the people. How do they feel? And they just say, this bull's going to do it? You're such frauds.
You've got a complex between the nature of the individual and the need not to be that fraud, and we sort of internalize the imposter syndrome, and the interaction between the individual, the environment, and the institution, and the interpersonal. So it's a complex issue. When you look at the nature of the individual and why they're attracted into the legal profession, and then you look at the actual system, we've talked about that this morning. What is it about the system that also stops us from being able to meet these particular problems around anxiety and burnout? What is it inherent in the system that could be changed that you see?
Well, I think like Yolanda said, more and more firms are bringing in psychologists and helping with debriefing. I think that there's not enough being done there.
We're addressing that, and we want to bring counsellors in and work with leadership circles, and that certainly. And I'm really happy to see that UCT at work is also looking at bridging that gap. Interpersonal skills, how to deal with angry clients, how to deal with hurt individuals. Were any of you trained for that?
I have a little bit of a different story. I studied law and I always wanted to combine it with psychology. So I applied to take psychology up until my final year. And when I worked at NGOs dealing with abused women and with sexually abused children, I was looking at all the other lawyers, and I could see the huge difference between me having training and them not having had that training. And I often thought, what would the difference have been, and how would we have been able to cope better had every single lawyer or law student, even if it was just a therapy course or anything like that. And I remember where my huge change began. I was at an NGO, and our chair committed, she was also a female lawyer, and she committed suicide. And we were just on a daily basis, we were dealing with all this trauma. And again, exactly the same thing, in the evenings it was either going to the bar, of course we weren't allowed to talk about it there, but we had coping mechanisms, we can drink ourselves silly, it really helped. And then we go back and we think about all these things and we worry about all these things and these women being murdered and you coming back to work the next day and the matter that we're dealing with, suddenly you don't have to deal with it anymore. The woman is dead, you know, you haven't done enough. And that was part of the reason. I mean, there were other things as well, and she just couldn't take it anymore. And I remember at that point saying, okay, maybe corporate law is a better, maybe that would be much easier to deal with. I was wrong, by the way, but that's what I thought. You know, at least there's not that much emotion. There can't be that much emotion. There can't be that much trauma. Boy, was I wrong. But these are the things that you go through constantly, and it doesn't matter where you are. If it's in government, if it's in private practice, if it's in corporate, it doesn't matter where you are. There's just different problems, and we have to find ways of dealing with those stresses.
The one thing that I've picked up over the years is that we don't have enough time. I mean, I'd like to make the time to actually talk to each other in the firm. Now, sometimes I want to discuss something with somebody. You might have a legal problem that I can't solve, or just bounce something off another. And you know how often they're actually fiddling, trying to get away from you. Because they're busy trying to make fees or whatever they want you to do. And I think it must feel worse at a lower level, or at a younger level, because there's even, you also have to overcome the experience, I'm so stupid type of thought. And I think it's that lack of foil that makes it a lonely position if you can't reach out and break it down. It really takes that energy to break that down, to speak to your partners, to speak to your chairman as if he's a person. In the end, he is. He looks at you you look at the eyes and you see the little boy in him. And it suddenly just everything falls away, falls in place. No longer. He's also fearful. He has to run this firm. He has to deal with assorted B levels and A levels and youngsters. It's hard. And I think the more one can talk without losing budget points, then the better it will be without having to have a therapist in the business.
So now you found a therapist of sorts, but in the form of a maternity coach.
Yes, absolutely. She was absolutely phenomenal.
I believe she's here.
She's Corinne Grant. Put up your hand. And she's also one of the facilitators in the breakout groups. And I must say, if it wasn't for Corinne, I'm not sure that I would have gone back to practice. But it was, to the credit of my firm, this was a firm initiative. And it was the second time that I was a guinea pig. And Corinne allowed me and my team, who needed the buy-in, and had to also have the vision of me being part of the team when I come back, allowed me to successfully transcend being at home with my baby, not wanting to come back. I prolonged my maternity leave on 2 occasions, and yes, I was eventually able to come back and be strong about it, but it's a work in progress. And I remember one of the things that Karen said to me is that if you need to walk out of the office at 3:30 for whatever reason, do it with your head held high through the front door, and don't slouch to the back. And I think I've also been fortunate enough to have the head of a department that has been able to appreciate me for who I am and for being a mother. But also I think Karen has guided that and has had those important conversations with the role players to ensure that the support is there not only from our side but from a holistic perspective. And I think she really does a lot to equip them as to how to deal with those unconscious biases that we spoke about, or the conspiracy of silence, because that is unfortunately what we need to break away from.
Absolutely. What else can we do, and this is an open question, to reduce these levels of anxiety, burnout and stress in the profession?
I think the structure is there. We all talk about pyramids and you know, lots of juniors, and then the middle associates and the senior associates and the director somewhere on top, because you realize the more hands are working, the more money you'll make. But the one aspect of a pyramid that you don't find is that you actually have the strength of many minds that could work together if you allow them to work together.
You talk about a team a lot, team and trust. Trust.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have got into a job now with my marks. And it sort of assumes that basically people know where to find the law, and you know how to write it down, and you might have a sort of more verbose way or a shorter way of doing that. But in the end, if you work in a team, you have to accommodate all these differences and let it go. Just let it go if it's not the way you would have put it. As long as the answer is right. Same with the raising your children. We all have to trust somebody to raise them for us because we're busy working. You have to let it go. There's the big things which are important, but the little things, whether the nose is clean or the feet have been scrubbed, are not important. And I think that's quite important. I'm repeating myself. That's the benefit of working together, because you can actually, because you're all working on the same matter, you can step out and say, I have to go now. And you know that the service will still be delivered. It is. By hook or by crook, it will be done.
Yeah, I think organizationally, or even personally, because I'm an advocate, so I work all on my own. It's a bit lonely, it gets lonely, but in the organizational experience, perhaps do the things that you love and do them more often. Even as a group, depending from what generation you are, if you like exchanging recipes, do that. Simple thing, it's just get your mind off work with the people, with your colleagues. If it's Need for Speed burnout CDs that you want to exchange or something, depending on which generation you are from, then do that. Do the things that you love more often to bring balance. It's bringing balance between this and this. Where's your intellect? Where are your passions? And bringing them together. And if you can, surprisingly, I actually love my job now. I mean, I told you this horror story earlier on, but I'm still a criminal litigator, and I absolutely love my job. And getting to that point is, when you're not doing that, do the things you love more often. Even if it's a simple thing, like sitting on the beach and meditating for 10 minutes. Do it more often.
I know that when I got to the end of a particular year, I sat on my stoop and I said to myself, all I wanted to do is one yoga class a week. And I couldn't find I didn't know where that was going to come from or how I could find the time. So you're absolutely right. But speak to those people who just say, well, where am I going to get the time to do the things that I love or revitalize me? Lawyers are very good, we are very good at knowing what's good for us, but not often doing it. Any advice?
Plan. Make the time. List.
Yes.
Get up earlier. Go to bed sober. Do exercise. Have a book club. Whatever. There's so many.
I want to
things
do
out
some
there.
more Lela advertising. Go for it. We begin, or sometimes end, all of our sessions with a little bit of mindfulness.
Yes.
When we do some form of yoga or meditation. And I think that when you do that, and you do that in your daily practice more often, you will realize that the little bit of time that you do have becomes more valuable, and you can do a lot more with the little bit that you have when you stop and be mindful.
That's absolutely beautiful. I remember having an accident and going to see an alternative practitioner because I wasn't very good at going to see the regular practitioners, and she was meant to touch my body and make it right, but she didn't. She talked a lot, and I was very resentful of that because I was paying her to touch my body and make it right. And then she told me about breathing, and she gave me this exercise to breathe. And again, I just thought she was, I mean, she looked a bit like a witch already. She was old, so And I just didn't know how
You
to make
really
sense
look
of
like
that.
witches to the young people.
Well, I now go around teaching people to breathe, but yes, to be mindful creates the space.
Because when you're all anxious and worked up, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do that, I'm sure you're still feeling like that since last week. But when you actually stop a little bit, the 10 minutes that you have from your hour, your 50 minutes that you have will be as valuable as 60 times 3. 3 hours of work can be done in 50 minutes if you take 10 minutes of your 1 hour to stop. Be mindful or play or whatever it is that you do.
Thank you.
And Wendy, I want to add to that, surround yourself with like-minded people. I was in an organization where there was just no way that you could talk about the things that we're talking about now. And going to the Walema sessions, for example, I look forward to it, and I find I walk out there every single time, and my cup has been filled. You know, sometimes I get there and I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't have time to this. I just don't have time to do it. And I walk out and I'm so grateful because of all these wonderful women around me going through exactly the same thing, sharing openly and honestly and making me feel, you know, worthy of everything. So support structures.
Knowing where it is, asking for it. Simone, anything to add?
Well, I think Karen Grant's new initiative is 10-degree changes. So make those small, incremental, low-hanging fruit changes that you can actually implement. It can make a huge difference in your life. Like, if you've got a huge day and you need to do some reading, get an Uber to work. Don't get stuck in traffic and read. I mean, that's something that we don't really think about because, you know, you need your car, but you actually don't. Do online shopping, you know. Just try and incorporate as much creativity as you can in your day to allow you more time to do the things that are not in your control.
And remember, the people who are your clients are people. They're not ogres. So when you so you can actually say to them, I can't get to it today or the next day, what is next Thursday in order? And 99% of the time they will say, fine. So you make your own whip if you don't take that bit of control, because with email and, well, it's really emails, nobody phones anymore. They pop in the whole time and sort of addictive and you want to be fast, mistyping. But it works quite nicely. I cannot get to it today, will next Thursday be fine?
Yeah, setting your own boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The tyranny of the boss, the tyranny of the client.
Yeah.
That's an imagined one.
Tyranny of the post-it notes. And the billable hour. Ladies, thank you so much. I mean, we could write a book together, not only on your stories, but on what you've used practically. And I think that the key is, from what I've picked up in the conversation, that it's a recalibration. We think we've got to change everything, and we just make 1 or 2 small changes, 5 minutes breathing, being more mindful as we prepare the children's lunch boxes, you know, not realizing that the people we work for are, you know, they're people. And I'm sure that there are huge numbers of tips that you all have. I'd like to add one last thing in terms of being vigilant to the people around you, because if they're not going to be talking about this because of the nature of this stigma attached to it, we've got to know each other and we've got to know ourselves. And I think that it's really valuable as women to start leading this movement of being able to actually say, are you all right? As Amanda says, being at each other's back. We're going to talk later about the Queen Bee scenario. And be at the back of the women that you know. You don't have to be at the back of all of them. You don't have to like all of them, but 1 or 2. And if you see odd behavior, I've been there. There'll be days that I haven't been able to get out of bed, where I haven't known what these hands are, where I've not been able to string a sentence together, and I've saved my energy for 4 o'clock when my children come home, and I've been just about able to manage that. Please notice those. Call your colleagues out. Call them up. ask them if they're okay, because the hiding game is no good for anyone. And it's also no good for business, because what happens when we're depressed and burnt out is we're not thinking clearly, we make mistakes, we're under pressure, we're not ourselves, we're not being authentic, and we're certainly not doing the work that we're here to do as women, which is lead a revolution behind the lady in red. Thank you very much. I would like to say that we're going to continue this conversation in the overwhelmed session, so I'm not going to take questions on this particular panel. That means we can eat. Good Investec food, please. No, you're right. No. I'm not thinking about food. Ladies, thank you very much. I'd like everyone to